The Electric Light Orchestra released their magnum opus with the 1977 double album Out of the Blue, which contains a song that has been determined to be the happiest song in the world. Stay with us to find out which one it is. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast, your home base, we hope, for the best in music and movie podcasting. Welcome aboard. If it's your first time, we are so happy and overjoyed to have you, Eric, right? We welcome everybody with open arms.
That was a very, very humble introduction.
Of course. We're modest. Modesty is like
we hope.
We hope. We say a bold statement, then we say, well, we hope. But we welcome you with a big rock and roll open arms hug.
Absolutely. Yep.
Our episode. And if you're new, like I said, there's a whole bunch of great content you can go check out. It's all free to browse in the back room. So go back there. No one's going to bother you. Check it out. See what's back there. See what you like. And then, of course, new episodes come out every Thursday. You can continue the conversation with us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And especially if you're watching on YouTube today, you're going to be in for a very special. It's show and tell day here. So we've got some special stuff that I'm going to be bringing out for this episode.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
He did not inform me of this beforehand, folks. He's good. He's got some goodies. Okay.
It stands to reason for this episode. He would have some goodies, right? So
of course it will, because I'm going to get him to admit something later on.
Well,
I'm going to try ananyway. So we'll see.
You know what? Yeah. He's not in person, so he can't twist my arm. He can only do it virtually. But, we'll have that. I went into the archives, got some fun stuff. Of course, Christopher Clark is with us, so welcome aboard, sir. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Yep. Yeah, Chris is actually the inspiration for doing this episode. We'll get to that in a minute. If you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you'll know that when Jeff Lynne gets mentioned, we ring the bell. That will be the only bell ring for today because we'll be talking about him a lot, so we won't kind of overwhelm you with the bell, but just know that it is there. All right, Eric.
Yes, sir.
I thought that if we were going to be doing another ELO album, I was probably guessing that we would have been doing El Dorado.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it was on the list at some point. Yeah.
I just from the ones we've done so far, I was figuring that El Dorado would be the next one,
what, that makes sense because we did Time, we did New World Records, so we covered the that later 70s period, so the sort of
and El Dorado is like their really proggy.
Yes, kind of if there was ever,
era, but it's also one of my favorite albums.
Case to be made for them, the proggiest album they ever made, I think, is El Dorado for sure. Yeah,
well, maybe ELO too, also, but that's another whole other thing. But what happened is, Mr. Christopher Clark, why don't you tell me about the email you sent me?
So the other, like a week ago, there's a podcast I listen to from time to time when I'm not listening to 3324. Called the Prog Report, and they very often will have very famous prog musicians on. And I caught one with, I don't know if you know who Steve Wilson is. He's he's a musician.
Very divisive.
Yeah, well, he's done a lot of. I love a lot of the work, his production. He does a lot of. He remasters a lot of the. Like I think he did Jethro Tull. He did Yes. He did. Chicago 2. He did a really good remaster of. And so when I saw that he was on there talking about the top 5, it was like a top 5 like you guys do, of audiophile records. And one of the...
He stole that from us, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Steve Wilson, one of the hosts mentioned Out of the Blue as being one of his audiophile records. And Steve Wilson got really hyped up about it. I'm glad you put it on your list because it was almost on mine, but I didn't put it on. And I never really would have thought of ELO as being like an audiophiles type of band. And so I emailed you and said, I got to listen to these guys more because, apparently this is a record that if you're an audiophile, you should be listening to. And I need to take the time to go down the wormhole, which led to you saying, well, let's do it as a podcast. So I've spent some time with the record since then.
Any mention of ELO is an opportunity. He didn't specifically, to be in all clarity and openness, and Chris didn't say he wanted to do a podcast episode. He just merely mentioned ELO, and that was more than enough for me.
Of course.
And then Eric's like, yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Because I've been wanting to do this one for quite some time. And there are some things to be interesting conversation to be made, I think. And definitely I think, Chris, you picked the right one. And I know they did, because this is probably the album to, best represent the I don't know if it's the best sounding album, but the case could be made that it's huge.
I mean,
compared to their older stuff. Yeah.
From the outsider's perspective, again, I'm not, like, my knowledge of ELO kind of extends to my love of movies that take place in the 70s, and it seems like they're always using ELO songs. But and honestly, I'm a big Kiss fan, and Ace Frehley covered "Do Ya," so that means I always kind of like cherry picked the hits. I never really listened to a lot of their stuff, but from the outsider's perspective, this to me was always like their Sgt. Pepper, like their masterpiece. Like, and I don't know if that's true, or if they're again, I need to spend a little more time with their discography, but that's why I always kind of thought of this as their penultimate album. Whether that is true or not, I guess you guys could speak to that better than I could.
Yeah, well, you brought it. You make a really good point, and I'm going to bring up something that Eric said on our New World Record episode as well. I like doing these episodes, the ELO episodes, not because I'm such a fan, but it forces me to really reassess the album.
Yeah,
not from the fan, and like I listen to it all the time, and I've said it in the past. I always try and put myself in a different kind of listening mindset, and really kind of evaluate the album in there. So I'm gonna make a statement. But Eric, in the in our New World Record episode, Eric had said that that you preferred New World Record better, and you said that Out of the Blue is just kind of more. And I have a response to that once you say what you're going to say, because I'm thinking about it, and I have a really good analogy.
Okay. I'm sure that's more than fair. But for me, in preparation for this episode, I took a listen again, and I think what it is for me is the fact that it's, there's a lot of songs that sound similar to one another, and songs that had been written on a New World Record that, for example, like, Telephone Line. I feel like on this album, if you were to listen to it in one listen, which for me is a little bit more difficult because I feel like there's a redundancy there of songs that sound too similar.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of feels a little bit long-winded to me as a double album. However, if you listen to it on the vinyl, experience is different. It's altogether different. I think I think as a producer, Jeff Lynne I'd like to think that he had that in mind when he decided to do, at this point, a double record. I mean, I could be wrong on that. I don't know. You're Dean. You probably know better than I do. So what's your response then? I mean,
I again, what you had said on that episode, it never left me, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It was just kind of where you were with it.
Yeah.
And so when I was listening to Out of the Blue, I was kind of keeping that in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the way I now think about this album. Did both of you guys see the first Avengers film?
The first one, yes, I did.
Of course, yes. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's a scene in the beginning when Thor is fighting Iron Man.
Okay.
Right? When they first, when they capture Loki and they're like fighting in the woods.
Yeah.
And Thor takes the hammer and he shoots the lightning bolt at Iron Man. And what does Iron Man do? Is he like absorbs it and goes to like 400% like armor, like it blows out his armor.
Okay.
And that's what this is.
I see where you're going with this. Yeah.
This is like max powered ELO, because they would never do this again. Jeff Lynne would say, I'm kind of done with this.
Mm-hmm.
So like this, to Chris's point, this is kind of what ELO was working towards in the previous 6 releases or 5 releases, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can start with the first album and go through each one and get to get to Out of the Blue.
Yeah.
But then anything after this is different. It's not I'm not saying it's worse. It is the end of what Jeff Lynne was going for, and then he started to move his attention towards something else, Chris.
And isn't this is kind of like after this record, it was like kind of where do you go and what do you do? We've hit where we're going to go with this direction, and then it's where they start. And then the next record they strip it back, right? That's where they remove the orchestral pieces and kind of it's a little bit. It's like ELO disco or something, like, or a couple of the tracks on the next record have that vibe, right?
Discovery was very much influenced by what was going on. It was very much more poppy. Yeah. But again, that's not a bad thing because that's Jeff was, starting to pair the group away, started to slim it down, leaner, started because he was tired of it. I've read recently in interviews, I was just kind of done with the strings. It's like I can't, I didn't want to keep doing that. And you see that metamorphosis from Discovery to Balance of Power. They changed into something else that was still firmly ELO, but not this ELO. This was kind of the peak that they were working for, that him and Roy Wood were working towards, who's the original founder. This is what they were working towards. So
that was, you're right. That was a really good analogy. No, but it makes sense. I see. Yeah, that in mind, of course. I mean, it is a bigger, and I think you made that point a long time ago when you were talking about the first song, Turn to Stone, which is, the album you wrote about it and you said that the album is bigger. It is what was, but it's bigger and more,
expansive,
and the sound quality. I mean, so that in itself is sure. If you were to say anybody who wasn't a fan of ELO, this probably would be the album that you would definitely recommend to say, here you go. I don't think if you're not that much into them, this is the way to go. There it is.
Yeah.
But us being fans, of course, we're a little bit more, we tend to be a little bit more critical and a little bit more, like whatever, because we listened to him incessantly back in the day. So, but that was my point. It was like, I felt like that just there's, to listen to it all the way through, just might've been just a little, maybe I want to skip to the next track because I think I've heard this already. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm not downplaying the album, the sound quality, what it represents, what it is it's just fucking iconic. I mean, it is their opus, sure.
So let's do the stats. Let's kind of really start the episode. 12 minutes in, I think this might be a record that we've gone the longest without getting to the stats because we're ready to do it. So this was released in October of 1977, produced by Jeff Lynne, all songs written by Jeff Lynne. So again, that's part of this whole story, is that he's like a one-man factory. There were 3 singles released stateside. Turn to Stone hit number 13. Mr. Blue Sky hit number 35. I'm sorry, there was 4 singles. Sweet Talking Woman hit number 17, and It's Over hit number 75, although that might be a UK one. Hit number 4 on Billboard. Believe it or not, this only went one-time platinum when it came out. It only sold 1 million copies. But as of 2007, it sold 10 million worldwide. So it was a... we've had this with other albums before where it only sold like that much. It's like, how does the album with Mr. Blue Sky on it only sell 1 million copies at the time? And part of that was part of what happened. They actually overprinted the album. They pushed out like the advance orders were so massive that they actually were chugging them out. And then it became an issue where they sued the label because it's like, well, you're flooding the market and it's actually making people not buy it because it's just the thing is everywhere.
Yeah.
This album was written in 3.5 weeks in Switzerland. Jeff Lynne was kind of just sitting around and he was kind of had a writer's block and he went to Switzerland and all of a sudden just.
That's impressive. See
that? I can't even wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he always writes music first, and then he worries about the lyrics later. So he's the guy that kind of constructs all the songs, and lyrics are a part of it. But as you see, he kind of does everything, and then says, "Well, I'll get the lyrics. I'll figure out the lyrics. But here's the song. I want to get that down." And like I said, this was kind of the end and the beginning of ELO. It was kind of the end of like the mission accomplished that he and Roy Wood had started. we did it. Jeff Lynne was tired, done with it. It's kind of like, okay, I'm, every album is this, I have to deal with, the strings and everything. And then, and Discovery has strings on it, and Time and these other ones have strings on them, just not to this degree. And
Right.
the male choruses. I mean, like I said, everything.
Mellotron and
the
yeah.
vocoder. Yeah, it's just a big thing. So for those that are, we'll do this now. For those that are watching on YouTube, you're going to get a little show and tell. Because we want to talk, I think it's important to talk about the album packaging. So first up this is an original 1977 sealed copy of Out of the Blue on vinyl. Never been opened, although it is a cutout, but this has never been opened. So I got this before the bubble of buying vinyl burst.
Yeah.
This is probably worth a lot more than when I bought it for, but I got it really cheap. But if you decide to open the album, and this was the pinnacle of album stuff. So I'll open it off camera, but
that flying saucer is so iconic.
In the album, you got a fan club sheet. This is original from that, and you can buy ELO T-shirt and merch.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You got a really cool poster of the band.
Poster, I remember that.
The iconic poster.
Yep.
And then the really cool thing that ELO did is they gave you this. You could build the actual ELO. This is all you punch all this stuff out and you assemble it, and it's like a tower.
Yep.
And the ELO spaceship logo sits on top of the tower.
It's fantastic, yeah.
And they get all of this was in there. You can see it's probably better this way. Maybe you can see where it says Electric Light Orchestra.
Can't get that on streaming, kids.
Yeah,
no, you can't.
Around the logo, and you it's all tabs. It's paper folding, and you put it together.
That's just I mean,
the full. They gave this album was like the full on thing, like double album, and they gave you all that stuff. It's just absolutely amazing.
And I don't know if anybody really realized, if you look at the logo intently, it's a jukebox. I think that needs to be pointed out as well.
It's based on the Wurlitzer.
It's a spaceship, but if you look closely, it's resembles a jukebox. It is that, the colors, So I think that's genius. Absolutely.
Gosh. Yeah.
New World Record had, you could definitely probably tell a little bit more there because it's, just front facing. But in this case, they, also, like you say, there you go. See, you can't get any better than that.
True fandom.
A true fan.
Ride or die. I
always wondered where you put it. Because I saw a picture of the tattoo. You posted it on Facebook, but I never know, where the hell did he put it? Is it on his leg? Is it on his foot? Where is it? There you go.
Right here.
That's fantastic.
Got it in Yonkers. Big Joe's before they left Yonkers. All right, let's get cracking on this. Like we said, there's a lot here. So Chris, you had never listened to this album outside of the hits.
I mean, I think I put it on one time as background noise, but never where I listened intently. I love, Mr. Blue Sky, I love as a song. Like I always drop it into like playlists and stuff, but I never put it on from top to bottom and really focused on what I was listening to. And I gotta say, I texted you earlier today. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's a great record. Again, I'm also coming in as a novice. They're not, again, beyond the hits. I don't really know them that much, but like every 2 or 3 songs, there was always something that caught my ear and stood out to me. I was also really impressed beyond just Jeff Lynne, just the musicianship. Like I never realized what a monster of a drummer Beth Bevan was. The fact that Kelly Graucut could cut through all of that.
Thank you for mentioning Kelly.
Like just that he could cut through all of the keyboards and the strings and the mellotrons. The fact that you could actually get a sense of the bass to me is like really kind of. I guess it's also a testament to Jeff Lynne as a producer, but there's just all this really good stuff going on, and it's in these really concise, well-written pop songs. To me, it's a phenomenal record. I really did dig it.
I could definitely. I'm glad you pointed these things out, Chris, because for me, I was going to make the point that this album, for me, is ELO as a band. You really get the sense that this is a true band, which would never really, unfortunately, happen again. I mean, after this, it was more stripped down, and they were just kind of doing very, I wouldn't say simplified stuff, but I mean, Jeff Lynne's production had a very particular, uh, sort of a almost stasis kind of thing where it was just very, very particular and he always wanted what he wanted. And this, it's so flowing and so, and in Kelly Graucut, God bless him. He, to me, is the pulse of this record.
Yeah.
His voice is it probably what to me, and it's a shame that he would not utilize him more going forward. Like the harmonies between, I mean, that distinctive voice that he had, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And it's a shame that he just never got,
Yeah, it is throughout the album. When you were mentioning Kelly, I thought you were going to mention him vocally, and that's the secret. That is the secret sauce to ELO. Chris is Kelly joined in on the Face the Music album, which was 2 albums previous. So he, and Jeff actually used him, which is very odd. He gave him solo songs to sing, Poker and Night Rider. They traded verses, so it seemed like he was kind of really enjoying it. And then on New World Record, he's in there Above the Clouds singing. And you really get them singing together on this album. Like pretty much any time that Jeff Lynne is not, if he's not singing by himself, it's Kelly. And I think, like we said on New World Record, sometimes it's Kelly in the forefront with Jeff behind, and then sometimes it's Jeff in front with Kelly behind, and you get a different sound from it because Kelly has that higher register and can kind of the two of them together almost create one voice, and it's just, oh my God, my heart breaks because this is so, on this album it's really there, and that's why this is the pinnacle, is all those pieces kind of came together of Jeff, like working with Lewis Clark for the arrangements and then bringing in these choruses of people, and then Kelly switching off, taking verses, and just everything just like fell into place here.
And I, to your point too, is as being a band, this is like, I mean, Bev Bevan is like, he's really being adventurous on the drums, but then from what I've read, he kind of goes into this where he's just kind of keeping the beat after this as well, where it's almost like he neuters the rest of the band. Like I almost liken it to like where they went from being a band to being like where Guns N' Roses for a while just became Axl Rose, or like Nine Inch Nails is only Trent Reznor, and like they almost become like the late 70s, early 80s version of that after this record.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The quality of the music didn't change. The musicianship didn't change. It's just the stripping down of the sound where, the booming Bevan drums that you hear on this and everything before was gone. Like Eric said, things were became more simplified. But again, in service to the song. Now, I can't. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I can't listen to anything on Discovery and say, where are those big fills, because it doesn't fit with what they were doing. This is kind of like the last, almost like a dinosaur, like the last of that iteration.
Well, there's some really good. Beth he's Shine a Love. I mean, you got that great snare. I mean, he always had that great snare sound. One of the, and I love a great snare sound, and he played it very well. And in songs like that, I mean, you get those flams, and you get, but yeah, even on Time. I mean, I love Yours Truly 2095 or whatever. That beat, that gets you. I mean, it's a great sound to the drums, and it just cuts in. It's simple, but it's effective. And I just felt like, Jeff was more, I think, maybe more interested in the sound of the drums more than the actual, the fills and the flourishes. And, and I think that kind of, Bev Bevan became a little jaded after after a time.
He wasn't too thrilled, like, especially when on those later albums when all the drum machines became in vogue, and that changed the sound as well, and it changed what you did with it. But here it's in full effect. You get those big booming Bev Bevan fills. The do-doom, do-doom, doom. Like they're peppered throughout this album, as is the vocoder. I never realized how much, I never really paid attention. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
They're actually, especially on the second album of the double album, heavily used in Concerto for a Rainy Day, which is a great suite of songs.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Let me roll back to Mr. Blue Sky, because I was into ELO before I was into the Beatles. So
Wow.
Mr.
Yeah.
Blue Sky was in my thing. It was like,
Mhm.
okay. So when I finally got into the Beatles and then listened to Sergeant Pepper and heard a song called Day in the Life, and Eric knows where I'm going, I'm like, wait, that's the middle part. I'm like, that's Mr. Blue Sky.
Mhm.
That's exactly it.
I never
Yeah.
thought of
You
that
know?
before. Wow. Yeah.
It is exactly it. And I found out today there's another song. There's a song called "Do You Remember Walter" by the Kinks.
Yep. Oh my
Where
God.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
beginning is exactly, it's the
Holy
dun dun
cow.
dun
Yeah.
dun. Yeah, and so I went and listened to that today. I'm like, holy crap! He literally took two songs, unique things about two songs, and was able to reconstruct it into something totally
Mhm.
his own.
I love both those tunes, and I never connected the dots. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
There's absolutely no doubt or if there's any confusion as to why this stuff is. I mean, it's Jeff Lynne is a major devotee of the Beatles, and of course, as we mentioned several times, got the chance to work with them directly. So I mean, it's if there's ever a person who deserved to be part of the Beatles, even in a late form of whatever that was, would Free as a Bird,
It
it's
was him.
definitely Jeff Lynne. I mean, he definitely fits in that mold, and yeah, he was,
Yep.
so
And then, as I said in the opening, via scientific research and algorithms, Mr. Blue Sky's been determined to be the happiest song ever in the world. It's based on, there was a Dutch scientist. He looked at the key that songs were written in, beats per minute.
Mhm.
Actually came up with an equation, and you put all these different things in here. The key, the beats per minute, the chords, and they get assigned a number, and then it's an equation. And if you come in within that range, that's the happiest song. So Mr. Blue Sky is actually number one. Don't Stop Me Now by Queen is number two.
Oh,
That makes sense.
well, yeah,
Good
yeah, it does.
Vibrations is number three. A song called The Riddle by Nick Kershaw. He's a British artist. I'm a Believer by the Monkees, number five. I'll Be There For You by the Rembrandts. A song called Pamela by Toto. I don't know if I know that. Mambo number five by Lou Bega is number eight.
Mambo number 5.
Our House by Madness is number nine. And Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham is number 10.
Okay.
But Mr. Blue Sky is up there. So, three words I wrote for this album: lush, symphonic, and beautiful.
Mhm.
And that's what I get when I listen to this album. Is it is akin to listening to a classical recording, because it's not Charlie Daniels Band, Devil Went Down to Georgia fiddle playing.
No.
It's arranged orchestral music that makes sense and is beautiful on its own. The ending of Mr. Blue Sky can get me very emotional when
Yeah.
those strings are starting to land. They're coming in for like a soft landing, and then it morphs into Richard Tandy's piano, who, rest in peace, just passed away recently. It's just gorgeous. I mean, this is something different.
Yeah.
Other bands have used these same instruments and violins and everything, but not to this level, Chris.
And to your point, the strings and stuff, they don't overpower the sound. They're mixed in really well. Like a lot of bands that will use strings or use orchestration, sometimes it kind of like blows everything else out, whereas this just kind of fits the sonic palette and mixes in really well. Whereas, so it's not really, it's another tool that they're using. It's not something that's drowning everything else out, which is not an easy task to do, to pull off when you're using strings and stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, if just example, listen to the earlier ELO. They couldn't figure. The cellos were very choppy and seesaw. And,
Yeah,
like,
well, they based it all on "I Am the Walrus," which is probably one of my least favorite Beatles songs. I never liked the song, and they're basing an entire sound, an entire experiment on a group, on that particular sound. And yeah, those first couple of albums are a little rough. around the edges, as I recall back in the day. Now I appreciated them totally, but
for a different reason. Yeah, it's kind of
for
a
different,
different thing
right.
going on, that they were, while they were working through this and figuring
Yes.
it out, they were being very experimental and not very poppy. And then once Roy Wood left and Jeff kind of had total control, you can chart. It's one of the few bands where you can, every album is different and it's heading. You could see that it's heading towards this destination, which is one of the things about ELO, is every album was a marked march towards smoothing the process, getting better at it, getting more poppy, but also incorporating the elements and refining the idea till you get to this last like bus
That
stop.
is a very good point, and I think that's what I came to the conclusion finally of my remarks about it being, and this holds true for people like Lindsey Buckingham as well. Is that there's always those, he always uses lines from previous songs or certain guitar riffs. You always, this is like a recall, and I always felt like it could be that didn't work the first time. I'm going to make it better the second time. Perhaps I'm going to use the same stuff. And the fact that he wrote this album in 3.5 weeks, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense in that way. So he really didn't need to do anything necessarily new here. He just needed to make it bigger. And that's it totally, see, that's why I love this podcast, because when we make these comments and these ideas, I mean, it makes you appreciate, the stuff, what you think is what, singular thinking, and you go into it and you think, oh, well, I have my own opinion, but I love talking this out with people and you guys. And it's just kind of like,
you get to reassess things. And I love it too. You get to but it seems like we both challenge ourselves just not to listen to it and say, oh, I love this, so I'm going to go talk about it. I reassess and say, well, what different thing am I picking up, or how does this fit into a way I never thought of it before?
Or you go back and listen to the Eagles, even though you can't stand them.
He decidedly didn't join us on that one.
No,
we're going to continue to work on you for that. How about Styx?
I dig Styx. Yes, I do like Styx.
Okay, we're probably due for another Styx album. Let's see. There's another. Jeff Lynne does wear his influences on his sleeve, because there's the song called "On the Border," which is the last song on the first side. Also is of a very loose rewrite of "Heroes and Villains" from the Beach Boys. That
makes a lot of sense.
Wow, you know what? Yeah, I didn't think of that either. Listening to it, that's one of those tracks that really stuck out to me when I listened to the record.
Yeah.
Kelly kills it on that song too. Kelly's voice on that.
He did it again on the Time album with "The Way Life's Meant to Be." He revisited that "Heroes and Villains" staccato way of singing verses on that track as well. He used it in a way that, he does it in a way that makes it uniquely his, like that you don't realize. It's like, oh shit, like wait. It's an homage. He's not ripping off the whole song, but he's using that way of delivering the verses.
It's got the same cadence.
Exactly. And then he builds upon it, and then he builds something totally different, which I love. I asked Chris to do me one favor. I said, if you could listen to the song "Starlight" with headphones. Did you do that?
I did it this afternoon. This whole record would be served to listen through. It's like, if I had the time to like sit down and listen to this completely through headphones, and I'm not talking like my little AirPods, I mean like a set of headphones like this, the whole thing, it's because everything's soundscapes. It's an audiophiles record. It's all soundscape. So it's amazing.
It's gorgeous. It is just like an absolute, it's one of those albums that you can kind of lay down on the couch, put the headphones on, right, and take the trip. And that's to Eric's point, and maybe that's the best way to listen to it, is just kind of kick back and kind of take the journey, because this album is a journey. Even though it's a double album, there's only like 4 songs per side. I mean, he's not pile driving you with a lot, but each song has a lot. Each song for me is I can see Eric's point where towards the middle of the album, you kind of like, okay, "Sweet as the Night" is that Big Wheels? Is that what's, is kind of what but they are unique. There is enough different stuff in there
but
to
you
chew on.
savor it though.
Yeah.
If you listen to side by side though, by themselves, the sides are great. There's something different. I think they're different enough where you just get that little dose of those 4 songs. And that's all that matters, is because the 4 songs that you're listening to are so meticulously crafted, and just, and you just savor every moment. And that's,
And then
rare.
the
Yeah.
brilliance of Jeff Lynne. One of my favorite songs on the album is the second song, "It's Over." I just love that song.
Yeah.
It's got the piano, it's got the 12-string guitar, and it's got that beginning, that orchestral opening. That is actually the beginning of "It's Over" is actually the end of Mr. Blue Sky in reverse.
Oh wow!
It's actually the ending part of Mr. Blue Sky. He just took it and reversed it and used it as the opening for the song "It's Over." Again, it sounds even backwards. It sounds fantastic. Like you don't even know, like it doesn't sound like it's backwards.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I got to give credit where credit's due. It's not just being a homer or a fanboy. There's a reason that I love this music so much, is because it's so well done, and it's just so like Chris said, the fact that he wrote it in 3.5 weeks. Even if he wrote this in 3.5 months, I'd still be like, what, just the level, or how he processes information, right? How he processes listening to Beatles or Roy Orbison, and all these artists, and then puts it through his filter, and then comes out with something that's uniquely his and different and so rich. That's one of the things we love, Eric, right? It's just the little things.
Oh man,
that he puts in it, and Paul McCartney said it the best. He said it about Mr. Blue Sky. He's like, everything fits.
Yeah.
Like everything, like when you listen to any ELO song, almost everything, there's so many things that are going on, but it all makes sense, and none of it sounds like, wow, what is that weird play? The little chirps, the beeps, and all these things, all the little vocal flourishes, they all like fit. And how does he know?
Well, he said as much on Secret. I know I mentioned this before, but he said as much on Secret Messages, the song, and the reason why there's just so much just stuff to listen to on that. I love that song so much because he did that on purpose. He goes, I want to capture your attention. You need, and you go back and you listen to the layers of what he has, being sort of like layered in, like almost like Tomorrow Never Knows in that regard. How many things can we kind of build on top of another, and just there's that little thing on that side and that track and that, whatever. And it just, yeah, I mean, he would get a little bit more experimental in that way later on, but it just, yeah, it's phenomenal. His sensibilities are just, and how does one do, like, I mean, we said this about Time. There's that moment on Time on Ticket to the Moon where there's that where everything slows down and there's nothing's playing. All you hear is do 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 do. That little bass line, like who writes something like that? Who composes a stop in a song like that with just a few notes? But yet there's so much there at the same time. There's all this noise happening in the background, this ambient, like weird, like electronic noises and stuff. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah, he actually did that in Turn to Stone, right? There's that the song stops, and he does this rapid fire lyric verse, but it's only accentuated by Bev Bevan's like hitting a drum, but you're kind of you're bringing with you what you had heard before, right? And it's almost kind of like through osmosis, it's kind of bleeding through, and then he picks up the song again right from where he left off. So it's amazing that, and again, he leveraged a lot of talent. He leveraged Lewis Clark, who did the string arrangements, and was able. And once he hooked up with him, it was like game on. Like that's why El Dorado is like a pinnacle point, because that's when he really hooked up with Lewis Clark, and he like smoothed everything out for him and kind of figured this out. And then it was just, they just kind of went above and beyond.
Yeah.
Where was I? Side. Let me see. Oh, Standing in the Rain, right? The Concerto for a Rainy Day, side 3, is a cycle of 4 songs. It is very easy for Mr. Blue Sky. Oh, Mr. Blue Sky. It's like, yes, but the last couple times I saw ELO live, they opened with "Standing in the Rain." And
Really?
that whole beginning, and behind was like this thing of all this rain, and they do the whole epic beginning and did "Standing in the Rain," which I thought was pretty interesting because that's really not even a fan favorite. But
Well, see, I prefer, like, Mr. Blue Sky by itself is great, but if I am to listen, I would not be like, that's not my like go to song. I have to listen to the entire concerto because I think the whole thing is absolutely gorgeous. Summer and Lightning is just,
yeah,
and that in itself, like when I talk about, that's Waterfall from Face the Music. There's a lot of the same sort of
mhm.
uh, the melody, and I think some of the chord structure there is there. It's basically almost the same song. It changes when it gets to the next line or whatever, but again, building up on that, and it just I just absolutely love that, and it's not a song that people talk about. It's definitely a deep cut, but it just, oh man, and then it goes to that part where it's just, I don't know what it is, that
Yeah.
it's just that little fun,
Funky.
and again, the happiness of it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you talk about Mr. Blue Sky, but that part of the song, that gets you going too, man. I mean,
Even Jungle, which seems like a
yeah,
throwaway song, it's such a great
yeah,
tune. Like even the kind of stranger stuff.
It's
yeah,
that one actually stood out to me. Like when I listened to the record, like I'm like, I know the lyrics are hokey and it's a little almost like childlike, but
Mhm.
just like it's just a really well constructed song. That was one of the ones that kind of caught my ear when I was listening to it. I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when I first heard the song "Margarita" by the Traveling Wilburys, and they have that breakdown of the nonsensical lyrics that they're saying.
yeah,
I was like, "That's Jungle." I was like, it sounds like Jungle. It sounds like the same type of vocalization, like with the lower registers and everything. I'm like, so the callbacks are there, and then of course Wild West Hero I think
hmm
is a fan favorite because he does that live, and that's like and what a way to close out the album because his voice is in Orbison mode.
Yeah.
Like that, like that's the great thing about Jeff Lynne is he's got his heroes and he knows how to
yeah.
not not imitate them, but be influenced by them. And he can do that big Orbison style voice. He did it on the song Endless Lies on Balance of Power. And Wild West Hero is the same thing. Like at the end, he's like, really belting it out, and it's just such a crescendo and the theme of the thing, helping, the Indians, I could stay overnight. They need my help. And it's just like this great, just,
It's a
it's
good
just,
story. It's a
yeah,
good, if you were a kid in the 70s, this is one of the first albums I ever experienced. I even forget how I don't even know how I had it or where I got it from. I certainly didn't buy it, but it was there in the record cabinet.
you
Um,
stole it. You stole fizzy lifting drinks.
I don't know. I know my older brother wasn't certainly not a big ELO fan, so I where it came from, I have no idea, but it was there, and I just used to listen. I love the album, the artwork, and just, the gatefold, and just like the spaceship, and just the entire. It was the entire package of 77 Star Wars, Close
Yeah.
Encounters. That whole thing
Big
was
Rich Perfectly.
tied in, and
Yeah.
yeah, and you just knew like this could be the soundtrack to that stuff, or you wanted it to be. Certainly, I always thought that Jeff Lynne should have been Doctor Who. He's definitely like Mission on New World Record.
Yeah.
That's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
If you listen to the song, that's what he does. That's his mission,
Yeah.
is to go and help people and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, for him to, they should have done that. And I think there was an episode of Doctor Who, one of the recent ones. Uh,
Yeah, it was ELO based about
it
time.
was ELO based. There was a
Yeah.
band that was a cover band that were doing ELO songs.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just great because, it should have been like he
Yeah.
should have provided the soundtrack, you know.
And
So
it's funny, Chris, when Chris had mentioned that you had heard this on a Prague podcast about this, by this point in ELO's career, they were, I mean, people were not kind to them at this point. If they ever were prog, they were, it was long gone. It was in the rearview mirror. But when I'm listening to this album, I'm like a song like The Whale and Instrumental. I'm like, this is kind of proggy.
I don't know.
I'm like,
that was the one. I was gonna say that was the one song. That's the one at the end, towards the end of the record, right?
The instrumental.
Yeah,
instrumental.
It sounded to me, that song sounded
not a
like
fan.
I felt like it almost was like, it seemed random. It almost sounded like it should have been in like a 70s adult film. Like it had that kind of sound to it. I'm like, what am I listening to? Because it just seems so random in the sequence of things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely has that sort of Roger Corman B movie flair, like Barbarella or something. I don't know, something of that nature, where it's just, yeah, you're right. That's like it. But I always loved it. It's just
and one of my favorite cuts is on that side, Birmingham Blues.
That's a good tune.
Which kind of calls back to Fire on High, Eric, right? That break in the middle with the guitar, a little bit of Fire on High. So yeah, he pulls from his influences. He also pulls from himself also to kind of use things, in a smart way or in a smarter way than he used it previously. So
yeah, and that song he would go on to continue that sort of rock and roll vibe on songs like, Rock and Roll is King, and that, that kind of thing, where, even Hold On Tight, to a certain extent has that, those chops, those rock chops in it, like rock area. And but yeah, it's just,
it's got some great guitar work on Birmingham Blues too. A nice solo. So Chris, what did you have?
I was going to say the one thing, I mean, and again, this is just from the outsider's perspective, I guess, because again, this is like really my first real deep dive into ELO in any kind of way. I always feel like his vocals, like they're not as clean as it always seems like they're either filtered through something or doubled, or like it's never just like a straight vocal. Like if I had like any kind of complaint, I mean, it's not that he's a bad singer, it's not that his vocal delivery, I always feel like it's kind of like put through something else instead of just getting like a clean vocal take, like where it's not doubled up or, with a background vocal, or like, being put through like some type of like studio, enhancement or something.
Processor.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's always, it always comes across as processed.
I definitely,
I think it texted me that, and I'm like, I don't really hear it that much. I mean, there are times when it happens, but what do you think about that?
He could definitely no, I get what Chris is saying, and he does do that a lot. But on the other hand, there are times where his vocal is just fantastic. If you're referring, you listen to the stuff he did with the Wilburys and the stuff Armchair Theater. I urge you to listen to like that. I urge you to listen to an album called Long Wave, which he was covering all these like old rock and tunes. His voice, he's got a fantastic voice.
I'm saying, I don't think it's a bad voice. It just like it would be, and which is why it would be nice to hear it more clean in some of the tracks.
I think
you will hear that, and these albums that I just mentioned, you will hear that purity in the voice. Even Zoom, there was an ELO when he was trying to reconvene ELO. There's an album called Zoom in 2001. There's a lot. It's like very, very stripped down. The vocals are not it doesn't have that over electronic feel. It's a very more guitar oriented, rock oriented album. And if you want to get a sense of what he's, his voice, that's another good example right there.
I would even go to on the Third Day from the ELO catalog is probably much stripped down and raw, not roar, but raw. So I get what you're saying, maybe because I'm so used to hearing it. It's like, that's just his.
But I think that comes from the producer in him, though. He just wants to make things sound interesting. So
everything's in service to the song. Even the like I said, the lyrics are a part of the song, and the fact that he usually writes them last kind of tells you where he's coming from as a songwriter. Not, I wrote these great lyrics and I need to put it to music. It's for him. I'm hearing this music. I'm going to create all this stuff, and then I'll write some lyrics to put it in. And he's never been known as the strongest lyricist, but he's got some great stuff. But It's not always, like I said, I always look at it as being another part of, as much of an the lyrics are as much of an instrument as anything else that he's fitting.
And the way he sings, the cadence of certain things, like you mentioned, Endless Lies, Dean. Much better version, by the way, on Secret Messages.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a really great example, actually, because Balance of Power is a hell of a lot more polished. And then you listen to that particular version that he went back and added it to which is now a double album.
Yeah, the expanded.
I love that version more.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So
I concur.
Chris, you look so sinister in the dark.
Yeah,
look at him.
It
got dark quick.
I wish you could still see my face.
You know what? Let's take this opportunity to.
All right. No, but before we do that,
go ahead. Oh, you said
I was going to do this at 45. Okay. But now we're at the 50-minute mark, and I'm going to ask Dean straight out. And
what was the significance of 45? Was there any?
I just wanted to do it 45 minutes in. We were going there because you were really, you're really talking this album up. Is this your favorite album of all time?
No. My favorite album of all time? No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problem with saying that. No, there are no, and it may not. I don't think it's my favorite ELO album of all time. It would be hard.
Yeah,
but because there's certain things like El Dorado is very special and Time is very special, so it would probably be a toss up between those two, and they couldn't be more different, two totally different.
That's
records.
True. Yeah.
But yeah, no, this isn't my favorite. This isn't my all-time favorite one. It's a fantastic album, and it represents. That's the thing about ELO is each album is so they're different enough that it's not like, oh, we did the sequel to this. Each album represented a step forward, so it's hard to say, oh, well, these two, there's like, New World Record and Out of the Blue are probably the closest back-to-back albums that you could say, okay, these are kind of in a group. And I used to group them in threes of like the first three albums and El Dorado, and but no, it's not my favorite.
Okay, fair enough. I thought I had you, but no, I guess not.
No, but it's not but as you can hear by my excitement is certainly certainly not down on it.
Okay.
I thought I would change things up. Normally we do 3 lies and a truth. This episode we're going to do 3 truths and a lie, because I think the truth of ELO is much more amazing than lying about them with the facts that I have.
Okay.
So we're of course we're going to have Chris go first because Eric will probably get it, but we'll see. So let me be clear for those playing at home. I'm going to give 4 statements. 3 of these are absolutely true. 1 of them is a lie. So now we have to figure out what the lie is. Normally it's what the truth is. Okay, Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready to do it.
Your head's going to be spinning after this. So, all right, here we go. 4 statements. 3 of these are absolutely true. 1 of them is false, but I defy you to figure this out. Okay. First one, A. After ELO founder Roy Wood, he left the group. After he left the group in 1973, he recorded a song titled "Bend Over Beethoven," which was after "Roll Over Beethoven" came out. He actually came out with a song called "Bend Over Beethoven," or did he? B. Everybody Loves Raymond star Brad Garrett appears on the back cover of ELO's 1979 album Discovery as an Arabian scimitar-holding guy. ELO founder Roy Wood, again, got the idea for ELO to pick up where the Beatles left off with Eleanor Rigby because of its first use of cellos. Final statement. Cher's 1998 comeback hit "Believe," remember, do you believe in life? Contains a sample from the prologue track of ELO's 1981 album Time. Now, there's a lot to digest. I'll run through it again, but I'll do it quicker.
Wow.
After ELO founder Roy Wood left the group in 1972, which is when ELO 2 came out that had "Roll Over Beethoven" on it, in 1973, he recorded a song called "Bend Over Beethoven." B. Everybody Loves Raymond star Brad Garrett appears on the back cover of 1979's ELO album Discovery as an Arabian knight holding a scimitar. C. ELO founder Roy Wood got the idea for ELO originally to pick up where the Beatles left off with Eleanor Rigby. Spent a few years trying to get that off the ground, finally recruited Jeff Lynne, and they did it. Final thing, Cher's 1998 comeback hit Believe actually contains a sample from the prologue of ELO's 1981 album, Time. 3 of those are absolutely true, as bizarre as they sound. One of them don't lie.
So I know Roy Wood is really eccentric, so that wouldn't surprise me that he would do something like that. The Cher thing sounds completely believable.
Okay.
What were the other 2? Brad Garrett, and then what was the other one?
Brad Garrett appears on the back cover of 1979's Discovery. And then Roy Wood actually got the idea for ELO to pick up where the Beatles left off with Eleanor Rigby. Like that was the springboard of hearing that, and it's like, well, that sounds like an interesting idea.
I'm gonna go with the Brad Garrett one. I don't think that's true.
Okay, everybody loves Raymond Starr. Brad Garrett appears on the back cover of 1979's Discovery. Okay, you're saying that's false.
That's the lie.
Everything else is true. Okay, Eric,
I'm gonna go with C.
You're gonna go with C. ELO founder Roy Wood got the idea for ELO to pick up where the Beatles left off with Eleanor Rigby. You're saying that is false.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, here we go. The first truth. Roy Wood did record a song called Bend Over, Beethoven. No hard feelings. They're great friends. So it wasn't like it was more like a kind of a nudge. It was a B-side to one of their, he formed a group called Wizard, which did great stuff. Every album was different. One was like country. I mean, the guy, he was probably never destined to stay in ELO because he's so, if we think Jeff Lynne is great, Roy Wood is so underappreciated and underrated because he does the same exact thing, probably even more. He plays everything.
I think he was probably the British Frank Zappa.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
how I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. His stuff with his stuff with the Move. And then when Jeff Lynne joined the Move and the stuff they were doing, Chris, you want to hear some really wild and great stuff between those two guys? Forget it.
I just listened to one of the records because it was a song from it was used in Boogie Nights.
Yes.
It's the one with the one with the black cover. I can't think of the name of it, but it was
it's on Moving On.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I mean, Moving On. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's like heavy. It's like they were really getting into it's some really interesting stuff. Oddly enough, there are tapes of, because what it was, just briefly, Jeff Lynne never wanted to join the Move. Roy kept on asking him. He's like, I don't want to. And then he's like, join the Move because I want to do this ELO project with you. And what we'll do is we'll keep the Move going because it's popular as our moneymaker. So we'll record as the Move, but then we can fund ELO. There are actually session tapes where they're recording as the Move, recording songs, and then they're doing the first ELO album. They're literally switching from like pop music and then getting out the cellos and the violins and doing sessions as ELO.
From what I was reading, that they actually performed on TV that way too.
Yeah, yeah, it's just amazing. Like two geniuses together, like really. Okay, so that was actually true. The other true statement, Cher's 1998 comeback hit "Believe" does contain a sample from the prologue of ELO's 1981 album "Time." The first time I heard the song, I heard it. I'm like, wait, what was that? It's literally like a 2-second, maybe even 1 second. I'm like, that's from the prologue of Time.
Yeah.
Very geeky. So we've got 2 things left. So one of these statements is a lie and one of them is still true. Let's go with the lie, right? What is the falsehood of the matter is, and I knew Eric was going to get it because he mentioned it earlier, and I was like, shit, he blew it up. ELO founder Roy Wood got the idea for ELO to pick up where the Beatles left off with Eleanor Rigby. It was actually "I Am the Walrus."
Yep.
They heard that, and they heard that those cellos and that swirling sound. He's like, I've got an idea to continue that.
So Brad Garrett's on the back cover of one of their records.
I should have.
Yes, he is indeed.
He is holding a scimitar. He's dressed like an Arabian Knight, and he's like, and he's got this dash. I mean, he was nobody in '79, but he is on the back. He's on the back.
Isn't that great? Isn't that fantastic?
So, to me, it sounded like you. To what I was thinking is like this cat on the back cover of this record looked like Brad Garrett. So that's wow, that's crazy.
It actually is Brad Garrett, and it's wild. Yeah. So how did you do at home? Let us know. Hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This time it was 3 Truths and a Lie. So of course, Eric, I knew it as soon as he said magical. I mean, I'm the Walrus early. I'm like, okay, dead in the water.
Sorry.
I know. It happens. I can't say don't mention it because then it would be like,
Yeah.
well, why?
I was a little tripped up with the Cher thing, though. I wasn't quite sure about that, but
Yeah, he doesn't. It's not credited because in the beginning it's like a swirling kind of oral landscape, but but there's a little snippet in there, and again, you'll be able to pick it up, Eric, when you hear it. It's like, yeah, that's from Prologue. Anyway, let's talk about some favorite tracks. Now let's leave out Turn to Stone. We didn't even talk about Sweet Talking Woman and Mr. Blue Sky. So Eric, what kind of what are the deep cuts on this album? Because I think some of the deep cuts are better than the singles. Like Sweet Talking Woman is not I don't think is the strongest thing on here.
I love that song. I loved it then. I loved it as a kid, and I think that what really drives those songs are the call and response things and the sort of melody. But no, you're right. My favorite tracks, hands down, are It's Over. From side 3. I love the entire concerto, but I think I love Summer and Lightning. Yeah. I don't know what, I just love that song. And I love Sweet as the Night. And I think the reason is because of Kelly Graucut on that one. And just to hear him singing lead, any kind of lead is great for me. But it's a song that sounds familiar, but it's a great song anyway. It's just, Yeah.
And Kelly Graucut put out a solo album in like 83. And it's pretty formidable. Like it sounds like what he does on that album sounds like it could be the sequel to Out of the Blue. Like he really had an affinity for actually understanding what Jeff Lynne was doing. And it's amazing because when I got that album, I'm like, wow, this actually sounds in a good way. It sounds like he was channeling ELO, that he understood the arrange, and he got Bev Bevan on it, he got Richard Tandy on it, and that's probably what pissed off Jeff Lynne because he was gone not too long after that. He's probably you can't out Jeff the Jeff, but he did. Like it's one of the worst produced albums ever. It sounds horrible. It absolutely sounds like garbage. But what's in there, the songwriting is absolutely amazing. So Chris, as someone new to this album, what was kind of grabbing you?
The Across the Border grabbed me. Like I said, it probably sounds ridiculous, but Jungle grabbed me. I thought Steppin' Out was a really beautiful song. And then, Mr. Blue Sky is actually, it is one of my favorite songs. But I would definitely say Birmingham Blues and Wild West Hero, like you had said earlier, like those were the ones that in my head, as I'm just skimming through the record, stuck out in my, really kind of stood out to me as I was listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go. You guys aren't breaking any new ground for me because it's over. Starlight, I just love. It's just got such a nice groove to it. Again, Kelly is not the lead vocalist, but he's there. Yeah, and that's what made that ELO sound is. And again, we give so much credit to Jeff Lynne, but this Kelly Graucut is the underrated. He's such the literally unsung hero.
Yeah,
of it because he's a great bass player. I mean, he's fantastic, but his vocals, he just matched him so well, and it just breaks my heart. Like when I listen to this stuff, and then like on Discovery, he was there a little bit, like Shine a Little Love. You kind of hear him, but then started phasing him out, and then Jeff Lynne started doubling himself and just started doing all that stuff himself. So it's too bad that it ended that way. Kelly Graucut ended up suing ELO for and later on he says, I regret ever doing that. I should have never sued him. Should have just tried to keep things on an even keel. So Starlight, Big Wheels, because actually my senior quote in my yearbook is
that's right
from Big Wheels. Yep. So I have to say Big Wheels. And what about the? Let's talk just quickly. And Wild West Hero, I'll go with. Mr. Blue Sky. What does he say at the end, Chris? He says Mr. like the vocoder is like Mr. Blue Sky.
And then I don't know what the rest of it is. I never really took notice of it.
It's actually the vocoder is actually not saying Mr. Blue Sky at the end. It's actually saying Please Turn Me Over, because it's the last song on the album, and the vocoder saying Please Turn Me Over.
Cool.
Because to flip the record over for the last side.
See, yeah,
cool. Very
cool. Well, there it is, right there. The proof.
great Easter eggs, great nuggets
Yeah.
of things that he was doing. Again, you only get that with vinyl, just like with Tom Petty, right?
That's right.
Eric,
Yep.
attention CD listeners
Yeah, that's right. I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
on Full Moon Fever, like, you know, those nods to that, you know, acknowledging the technology. But this is it's just a fun album to listen to. Also, I think just as there's a lot here, and you could probably listen to the first album by itself and get a full experience. I think, and then listen to the second album when you're ready, and get a full get another experience. You know, I think they're unique enough that they stand on their own. Eric, what do you think? Like, I think you could do that if you just want
I
to
think
listen
you
to the
could.
first album. You'll get a you know.
Well, it's like I said. I mean, every side has its moments. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely worth listening to in that vein. I just think feeling like maybe it's because you just don't want to listen to it all the way through necessarily because you just want to savor it.
Yeah.
I feel it's an album that is definitely worth savoring in that respect. You know, there were concept albums that it's like watching a film. You know, things like The Wall. Anytime there's a concept where you really have to, you know, you can't just listen to side one
Yeah.
and say and you can come back to it later. Like it's just like interrupting a movie.
Going out to dinner.
And in this case, it's definitely one of those rare occurrences where every side, you know, you just take it in doses. Electric Ladyland is like that. Jimi Hendrix, you know, there's a few out there that are like this. Yeah, so
you absolutely can.
It's kind of interesting too because you know, I grew up in the, you know, being a teenager in the 90s. That was when CDs allowed people to put like 70 or 80 minutes worth of music on it. So like an album being an hour and 10 minutes isn't really that odd, but like, you know, and so talking about listening to it in bits and pieces because, you know, it is such a long album, but this one, at least it holds up. Like, you know, there was a lot of filler on a lot of those records when I was a kid. This one, it's an hour and 10 minutes of just like straight up listenable, more than listenable, excellent music. It's really a testament to the band and Jeff Lynne as a songwriter.
Yeah, I think Eric and I talked about that. I think on one episode where once CDs came in, it's like, oh, we can fit 18 songs.
Doesn't
And it's
mean
like,
you
well,
should.
exactly. That's what we said.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you might. That was the great thing about vinyl. The limitations of vinyl meant you had to pick your pick your A stuff to put on there.
that's right.
Unless you were going to do a double album, and everybody but we've said this for everybody but Chicago, you know, didn't really do double albums. You did it once as a special thing. It was like a statement. Other than that, you kept your albums lean. You gave the best stuff there. So when CDs came, it's like, well, you've got all this room and you don't have to worry about cassette or things. So just put all your crap out there. And that's what sometimes, that's what you got is.
And, you know, of course, back in the day, we didn't know that, you know, it affects the sound quality as well.
Yep.
The more music they put on a side, the less the quality.
Yeah. Especially as you get to the end, the middle of the record, the grooves get smaller and the quality.
And with this album, you cannot diminish that sound. There's no way. I mean, if you know, it would be a shame if that happened. If the more he put on it would have totally, absolutely.
You could cram it in, but you don't want to because it's one of those interesting things that the limitations of the format actually kind of made the artists kind of we got to put the really good stuff on here. Or sometimes it was like we need one more. So what are we going to do? Let's kind of get something in there.
Right.
We've heard plenty of stories about that as well. So. I think that's going to do it. I think we've kind of, I've certainly gushed. So if you're tired of
we definitely made the case for this one, my friend.
If you have a toothache from all the sweetness, I'm sorry. Go see your dentist.
Hey,
but
you know,
we only do yellow like once a year, if that. So.
I am not ashamed of it at all. This was a great one. I really enjoyed talking about this record because listening to it was come back to it in its entirety was a pleasure. And it holds up.
I was surprised you hadn't done it already.
Yeah, well,
no, we try not to kind of like overwhelm people with the stuff that we try and be methodical about the genesis, the Phil Collins and the ELO.
Hey, I approached Dean with why don't you do like an entire podcast on ELO? And he's just like, no, I just get sick of them. I think that was your response. But people do that. I mean, there's podcasts out there that are specifically for one group. and
there's one called Billy Joel A to Z, and they go through all his songs in alphabetical order. They talk
about Guns N' Roses one.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a thing.
Is there enough there? I don't know.
I don't know. I think they're pulling from other places now, but it's Appetite for, I forget what it's called, but yeah, it's a play on Appetite for Destruction.
Unless they're just going through the schedule of every time he was late, because I saw him in the 90s. I saw him a lot in the 90s, and it was like an hour. We're sitting in Madison Square Garden. It's like an hour, and he still hasn't come out yet. And Soundgarden came and left, and like, when are they coming on?
My younger brother and I saw him. He came out at 11 o'clock. My brother started jumping up and down. I can't believe he showed up. I didn't think he was going to show up.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's just awful to treat your fans and people that are paying you like that. It's like such an attitude. Anyway, for a different time.
Yes.
But Axl Rose is an uber ELO fan.
I read that.
Uber ELO fan. So that there is a connection there. We'll give a bell ring for Axl Rose and his love for Jeff Lynne. Unfortunately, he was not available to come on the podcast, but we also didn't try. Well, there's that. Anyway, if you've made it this far and you haven't liked and subscribed, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, that lets you know when new things come out. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast provider, you can do the same. You can actually on your podcast provider, you can actually text us right from there should be a text me button or text us button, and you can kind of contact us right through there, or let us know what you thought of the episode, and we're able to interact with you and respond that way. The wonders of technology never cease to amaze, but you can do that as well. Again, thank you everybody for checking us out. And Chris, we're going to let you get into the light so you can, for those watching on YouTube, you know exactly what we're talking about. He is in Starlight. So it is apropos for the episode. Eric is going to remain on his comfy couch until the very next episode. Now we'll be here on my super hard green IKEA chair. So for Chris, for Eric, this is Dean, and please turn me over.